All right, let's jump right in. We're about to explore the incredible story of India and its national animal, the tiger. But this is about so much more than just conservation. It's a story about a sacred bond that's thousands of years old, a relationship that was nearly shattered, and the absolutely monumental effort to reclaim a striped legacy.
You see, from the very beginning, the tiger has been more than just an animal in India. It's this powerful icon representing the dual nature of the wild. Yeah, immense power, for sure, but also a deep spiritual connection, this delicate balance of the natural world. And this idea, it's pretty much central to our entire story today.
So here's the journey we're going to take. First, we'll look at this ancient reverence in a sacred bond. Then get ready for a dramatic shift during the Great Hunts. After that, we'll see the devastating consequences in a fading roar. And finally, we'll get to the fight for survival and redemption in Guardians of the Tiger.
Okay, let's start with part one, a sacred bond. To really get a handle on India's modern conservation efforts, we have to go way, way back, to a time when humans and wildlife were truly seen as part of the same spiritual family.
Now, this reverence for nature, it isn't some new idea. It's literally woven into the fabric of India's oldest civilizations. I mean, think about it. In the Indus Valley, nature itself was held sacred. Then, during the Vedic period, animals and gods became totally intertwined. This established this deep-seated foundational respect for the wild that would define the culture for centuries.
And this wasn't just some vague, fuzzy feeling of respect. Specific animals became incredibly powerful symbols, a part of everyday life. You had the tiger and the lion as emblems of royalty and divine power. The elephant represented wisdom and strength. Even the peacock was a symbol of grace and divinity. These weren't just creatures out in a forest, they were a core part of the cultural and spiritual landscape.
And eventually, this cultural value is actually formalized into law. We're talking 3rd century BCE, when Emperor Ashoka didn't just suggest kindness, he etched it into stone for everyone to see. His famous edicts promoted compassion and put heavy restrictions on killing animals. It's now considered one of the earliest examples of state-sponsored conservation ethics anywhere in the world.
Okay, so now for a complete 180 in our story. Part 2, the Great Hunts. That ancient covenant of respect, it began to crumble, and in its place came this new idea, where nature wasn't something to revere, but something to conquer.
And wow, this slide just lays it all out, doesn't it? The contrast is stark. On one side, you have this worldview where nature is sacred and compassion is a virtue. And on the other, hunting becomes a sport, a way to prove your bravery and collect trophies for prestige. The entire philosophy was just turned on its head.
So under the Mughal emperors, and later the British Raj, this new mindset really took hold. The shikar, or the Great Hunt, became this lavish, high-status affair for nobility and colonial officers. And the tiger, once a symbol of divine harmony, was now the ultimate prize.
Let's move on to part 3 and see how this all spiraled into a crisis. A fading roar. This is the tragic, inevitable consequence of that shift in values. A period when India's most iconic animal was pushed to the very, very edge of existence.
The first and most direct threat was, of course, the hunting itself. For decades, tigers were pursued relentlessly. Why? As symbols of prestige. Thousands upon thousands were killed, and their numbers just plummeted as the demand for trophies continued. This was a direct, brutal, and devastating assault on the species.
But it wasn't just the hunting. At the exact same time, the tiger's entire world was shrinking. I mean, vast tracts of forest were being cleared out to make way for railways, tea plantations, farms, and growing cities. So the tigers were being hit with a double whammy. Their populations were being hunted down, and their homes were literally disappearing right out from under them.
The result was, well, it was catastrophic. The population was estimated to be around 40,000 at the turn of the century. By the early 1970s, that number had crashed to fewer than 2,000. Let that sink in. By the time India was really taking stock of the damage, its national animal was facing a very real possibility of just disappearing forever. The roar that had echoed through its forest for millennia was fading into silence.
But the story doesn't end there. And this brings us to our final section, Guardians of the Tiger. This is the turning point where a nation woke up to the crisis and began the long, hard journey to reclaim its heritage.
You see, India's independence in 1947 was a catalyst.
Forging a new national identity meant reevaluating its relationship with its own natural treasures, separate from that colonial legacy of conquest. And the alarming state of the tiger population? It just couldn't be ignored anymore. The need for an organized, nationwide conservation effort was critically urgent.
So the first major step was to create a legal shield, a line in the sand. The Wildlife Protection Act of 1972 was an absolute landmark piece of legislation. It gave the government the power to create protected areas and gave species like the tiger the highest possible level of legal protection against hunting and trade.
And this slide really shows the powerful two-step strategy that followed. First, the 1972 law provided the legal backbone, but a law needs a focused plan of action, right? Well, just 1 year later, that plan arrived. Project Tiger, launched in 1973, was the dedicated on-the-ground mission designed to finally turn the tide.
Project Tiger was a total game changer. It wasn't just about saving one animal. It introduced a systematic, scientific approach to wildlife management across the entire country. Its main goal was crystal clear: reverse the tiger's decline. And it did this by creating a national network of protected tiger reserves, a foundation that remains absolutely crucial to conservation efforts to this day.
So, when you step back and look at the whole picture, what we've seen is this incredible arc, from an ancient, sacred symbol to a trophy hunted to the very brink of extinction. And out of that crisis, India embarked on this historic journey, not just to save an animal, but to reclaim a vital part of its cultural and natural soul.
You know, India's journey really proves that with enough commitment, a species can be pulled back from the brink. But the challenges of habitat loss, poaching, and human-wildlife conflict, they're still immense. And that leads to the crucial question we all have to think about. What new strategies and what level of global cooperation is it going to take to secure this striped legacy for all the generations to come?